All right, Alan Quinlan is with us. Alan, good morning to you. How are you getting on?
Morning, lads. Good, thanks.
Natural order restored at the weekend. An absolute hammering handed out by the All Blacks to Argentina, and Springboks beating Australia. So is that the truth of the situation? Is that really where we are at the moment? The previous week was a bit of a fluke, or what do you think?
It's difficult to gauge where they're all at now, Ger. I think we had a situation with Ireland where they won that second test, and you think, is there going to be that kind of a reaction in the third test? That didn't happen. Ireland obviously went on and won. This was a similar situation for Argentina. Could they kind of deal with kind of that angry response from New Zealand? And they weren't able to. It was a complete role reversal from last week. New Zealand struggled at the breakdown. Argentina were very physical, winning last week, and the opposite was the case this week. In fact, in both matches, it was the opposite. It was an angry reaction that Argentina and Australia couldn't deal with. So, the way the rugby results are gone, the Rugby Championship results are gone. They're quite strange. You get one big performance and then you lose the following week, and vice versa. And it's been happening all the teams. And New Zealand are top of the pile now on 10 points. The four teams, they've played four, lost two, won two, each of them. But they were pretty ruthless, New Zealand, this week. I think the conditions were really terrible in Hamilton, and their accuracy and execution was so much better, and they were very aggressive. And so I think that gives them hope again. And I've said this probably since before the Ireland tour. I think this team are impatient. They're obviously not as good as the teams that won previous World Cups, and particularly the team in 2015, which was probably one of the best teams we'll ever see. But given that, for the first time in their history last week, they lost 3 consecutive home matches. They're making a lot of kind of unwanted records, if you like, this group. But Ian Foster stuck with the same players this week and gave them a chance, and they did respond. But I don't think they've been properly coached. It sounds crazy for, historically the best team in the world. Joe Schmidt is obviously kind of involved with a hands-on approach now, and I think they're a side that, and what I've seen in the last few months is they're pretty impatient. They try and score after 2, 3, 4 phases. And they're probably used to doing that. And then when it doesn't happen, they force things a little bit. And so I think they probably can take a lot of confidence out of that. And it was a ruthless performance. They were very, very aggressive. But if you're a New Zealand rugby fan now, you would want them to be consistent, even if they lose a game here and there, which they probably will going forward, that they're in the fight, and it's not a poor performance that they're getting, but that was so much better from them this week.
One of the things that you wanted to talk about was the difference between the referees week on week in the Rugby Championship. And it's always interesting because, very subtly between the first and the second test, Ireland brought up that specific issue of the New Zealanders coming through the rucks and taking the man out on the far side of the ruck. They got pinged for it the following week. We got a lot of penalties. It helped us flip field position, and we won the game. I'm not saying it's the only reason we win the game, but certainly it helps.
It makes a huge difference, Ger. It makes a huge difference, and that was the issue for Ireland. And again, the last 2 weeks, complete change in the refereeing and the decisions that went to either side.
And last week, I was going to just make the point that the New Zealand coaching ticket made a big play about bodies not rolling away and lying on the side of the ruck, and Cheika's like, well, you know all about it. And lo and behold, something changes this week. And you're kind of thinking, again, not to bring it all back to Razzie, but Razzie goes on this crazy offensive. The video gets leaked. And it just seems as if you're not complaining about the referee, if you're not in advance warning the referee about the opposition, then you're not playing the game at the moment.
Yeah, and it's becoming very, very frustrating for coaches right across the board. From URC to Champions Cup to international matches, you get a bad performance and you get some kind of crazy decisions. And we see what's happening with VAR in the Premier League at the moment. You have video referees. I think trying to help the referees out on the fields. And rugby is very difficult at times. It's very easy to go back and look in videos and see players coming in from the side, players not rolling away, different things that should have been penalised, not getting picked up. And rugby's a game that seems to kind of go one way very, very much. Everyone will have a decision here or there, but I thought in both those games last week, the refereeing was really poor. In the New Zealand-Argentina game and the Australia-South Africa game. I thought that it was very inconsistent, and it does have a massive effect. And you correctly point out that Ireland had big issues with New Zealand at the breakdown in that first test in July. They were highlighted, and a lot of stuff changed the following week. And Jaco Piper ref the second test, and you could continually hear him warning New Zealand about side entries, taking players out beyond the breakdown, which wasn't penalised in the first test. And the frustration, the crazy thing there, I couldn't believe that New Zealand kept doing the same thing, because I always remember Joe Schmidt and stuff coming out of the Irish team when they went through that period from kind of 14 up to the World Cup, that he had this policy of highlighting incidents after a game that weren't penalised, but probably should have and could have been penalised against Irish players, and how they prevent those kind of pictures that they're presenting. New Zealand didn't adapt to that situation at all from the first test to the second test, and then lo and behold, I think it was 3 or 4 penalties in Dunedin, that second test, that they were penalised against. And we saw the similar trait last week. Paul Williams refereed the Australia-South Africa game, and I thought some of his decisions were baffling, and they had a big effect on the result, and caused a lot of frustration to the South Africans. Nika Amash Ukeli, the Georgian referee, who's relatively inexperienced at international level, I thought he was really, really poor in that first test. And if you're getting away with stuff, I know it from my own kind of experience, if you're getting away with kind of slowing ball down at breakdowns and stuff like that by the referee, you're going to keep doing it. It's not that, it's just if a referee doesn't warn you, you're going to keep fighting for the ball and, lying on the wrong side and all that stuff. And obviously when you play New Zealand, you want to try and stop their flow. So I thought last week the refereeing was really, really poor. I listened to Nigel Owens talking about it as well, and he was the one who was really, I had this feeling after the game, but he spoke openly about it last week. And that needs to be sorted out, that you get it. You don't need a Razzie Erasmus but all these coaches, Ger, they all do this.
I know that, but
internally.
I know we know that they do it internally, like not to revisit and relitigate it, but like the leaking of it is the bit where and I think as well the tone and the language that was used. But I if you're not doing that now, if you're not trying to influence the referee, then you're actually putting your team at a disadvantage, because they do seem to be very easily influenced.
Yeah, well, I think Joel Juge, the head of the referees, like, he will give the feedback to all these players. And in fairness, they'd be pretty harsh on decisions. They go through them with a fine-tooth comb. So it's hard being a referee. And, Razzie's thing probably is not the right approach, because, you're kind of turning guys away. In fairness, they get very much exposed. They get a lot of abuse online.
Yeah.
Which we don't want to create a situation like that. But I think collectively, without kind of individualizing this, there's always going to be 1 or 2 decisions where, a team have a line out 5 yards out, they go up, somebody grabs a hand, it's not seen by the referee, it's not seen by the assistant referees, and the opposition win the ball, clear their lines. That situation was a try-scoring opportunity for a team, and maybe would have won the game. You have a culmination of those little things at scrums, at breakdown, a couple of decisions that were wrong, and you end up with 6, 7, 8 of these decisions in a game, and they do influence the scoreline big time. And it's the inconsistency of these situations. So kind of directives from last season, particularly to start of this season, was less input from the TMO, if possible.
Yeah.
So the message is sending now as well, don't intervene in these little situations where I think they just need to work better.
But Quinny, were we not 18 months ago going TMOs were refereeing the games? Like, particularly because we ended up quite often where the more senior referee was the TMO rather than the referee on the pitch.
Yeah, absolutely, and we didn't want that. And Nigel Owens, who I reference again, he was one saying that they instinctively they have to referee the game themselves. But assistant referees are always pulling for the offside line. They need to watch these small, intricate things, side entries and stuff like that. And it's hard on the referee. You need to have a swivel on your head to see some of the stuff that's going on. Maybe a situation, Nathan, where the TMO can talk directly to the referee without everybody hearing it. That something has gone on that they need to have a look at. But look, it's a fine line between stopping the game up. But my point is here. Last week you had lots of these incidents, and this week I think you've 2 games that are refereed better, and we're seeing a lot of that.
And look,
we're seeing a reaction kind of performance from the referees. So look, it's a difficult job, but
definitely. And you do forget as well that obviously you hope that this is the referees, and the panel of good referees being built and broadened. So by the time the World Cup rolls around, we're not left with inexperienced referees who are crumbling under the pressure, as we've seen at World Cups before. Like, wasn't it the Scotland?
And to be fair, Ger, they do review the games, and they're kind of they do get a fair rap on the knuckles from Joel Hughes, and all the time.
Yeah, no, and that's as it should be, really. You wanted to ask about the Emerging Ireland stuff.
Yeah, obviously this was announced last week, so they're going for a 3-game mini tour in South Africa. I was listening to Mike Prendergast talk about it from a Munster point of view, and how, again, they're just going to have to adapt and accept the fact that the player's going to be missing for, well, it'll probably end up in maybe up to a month, all in. And whether it's the right thing to do mid-season to be bringing these players away from their province, like, it does seem to undermine the URC massively.
Yeah, it's hard. It's a hard one, Nathan. Obviously, the international team will get preference, and it's 12 months from now they'll be in France for a World Cup. So I didn't know anything about this, or very few people knew anything about it. I think the provincial squads, the 4 provincial squads throughout Ireland, will obviously deep down be a little bit frustrated. They're trying to build for URC in 2 weeks. Well, it's the weekend after next. They're in URC action, and you don't want to start out, in particular Munster away to Cardiff, then they're away to Dragons. If they get a number of their players taken out, will it affect those early rounds? Leinster can probably cope with it a little bit better, depending on when their internationals are kind of integrated. I don't think they'll play the first couple of games, but yeah, certainly it's kind of a catch-22. If it depends the caliber of player that's brought. Like, I presume it'll be some of these guys who are in New Zealand, and it's a difficult situation, because if they go there and play games and it benefits them, and we're talking about this next year, World Cup, saying it was a masterstroke that Ireland developed more strength and depth, built more confidence. Got that block of kind of coaching and preparing together, we'd be saying it's a great thing. But it's a tricky one. I'm not really sure. But look, the provinces have big squads. They've got to adapt and just go with it. And usually the Irish provinces are up near the top of the table anyway. So I don't think you get any sympathy from the Welsh or from the Scots or the Italians.
Does Kieran Frawley go and play every minute out half, or do they?
Well, that'll be the interesting thing, as Quinny said. Is this a reaction to the New Zealand tour, where there wasn't much experimentation, and while those guys got the midweek games, do they now bring them down again and actually give them a lot of game time? I guess part of it, Quinny, as well, is getting used to that environment of games quickly together, reacting, how the Ireland management team works, how they analyse games, how they feed back information, and getting players used to it. But I think that'll be the most interesting thing. Is it the Kieran Frawleys, or is it a level below that? Guys who are maybe even barely getting into the provincial squads.
Yeah, well, we don't know that yet. So I think, look, I think that you'd kind of be handpicking a number from each province to try and keep it fairly even, if possible. You know, if you take 10 or 12 from Leinster and 3 from Munster and 4 from Connacht, or 4 or 5 from Ulster, I think if they kind of balance it out a little bit, there won't be much given out. But look, they've got to pick who they think is best.
You're not bringing Jack Carty.
Yeah. I don't know. I think someone like Jack Crowley in Munster, if you're talking about an out half with potential to maybe get up the next level.
Like Carty obviously was injured and so couldn't go, and so maybe you do bring Carty and say, this is a chance for you to get into the World Cup squad, and we're going to pitch you like it's a dogfight between you and Frawley to play these 3 games, and how you appear in training and how you appear in the meetings is what we're judging you on. Like I don't know, unless
and if it's an emerging Ireland, I think it's kind of the next level down. I think the whole reason of having the matches would be to bring, probably from 30 onwards, not from 50 onwards. You know what I mean?
Jacob Stockdale, is he in the squad?
Yeah, well, if he's back playing, and that's a big boost for Ulster and Ireland as well. He's been out for over a year, which is, he's obvious international quality and talent. So, yes, of course, I think he should go. But I think they kind of bring as many as it's the next level of guys who they think maybe they can get 5 or 6 of these guys to step up and really believe in them. You said it, Nathan, there. I think the whole benefit of being away for over 3 weeks together and as a group is the preparation, the individual stuff with the coaches, the video analysis, all that kind of stuff, and building confidence and belief that they can step up to that international level. I've always said this, and I've seen it in my own career when young players come in training with the Irish squad, they kind of grow a foot taller. They believe that, if it's managed right, some guys can lack a little bit of confidence if they play and they don't play well. But emerging players and young players being in an environment that's pretty intense, and I think a lot of it would be to get them up to speed with the type of game, the type of coaching, and maybe some of them might get obviously a lot of them would get a look in then for Fiji for November, and with a possibility of a few of them squeezing into the Six Nations squad. So overall, I think it'll be beneficial. And look, it has to happen. We've asked for things to be, done differently because of the disappointments of the last World Cup. This is something different. This isn't something they just picked and decided to do after coming back from New Zealand. I think it was probably in the offing and the planning before that. And I think overall the Irish squad and the World Cup preparations have to take preference.
I think that's fair enough. I think if they didn't do something like this, and we were, so I wonder, is there something specific that they're looking for? Is it Frawley, like, or do they put?
Possibly,
maybe it's,
but
if they're going to South Africa, maybe it's the front row, and they're.
I think it's very difficult to go down and play the Griquas and the Cheetahs and really know where they're at. Let's be honest. Some of the provincial A teams could probably give them a go. I'm not being disrespectful. One thing they will get is a real physicality. There's no doubt about that. But from a skills point of view, I think they'll be fine. So you're not exposing these guys to international standard kind of pace, tempo, all that kind of stuff. But I think it's more the internal building blocks that they can try and achieve with the group and spend time with the coaches, because even though the Irish coaches, they're around all the time, they don't have this hands-on approach with a lot of these young fellas. So I think they'll really look at the skill development and where guys need to work and what they need to do to get up to the next level. So I think that could be incredibly beneficial for both sides.
All right, we got to leave it there. Alan, good stuff. Thanks a million.
Cheers. Thanks, guys.
Alan Quinlan giving us his thoughts there.